If you cringe at the combination of live action and Avatar: The Last Airbender, you are not alone. We aren't going to try and do the impossible, which would be to convince you the live action movie wasn't a disaster from start to finish. Instead, we're going to look on the bright side and talk about why the upcoming Avatar Netflix show has the potential to be something truly spectacular. They say that those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, so as much as it pains us, let's take a quick look back at The Last Airbender. Good live adaptations of animated movies are incredibly rare, but even with that in mind, this film still stands out in many people's minds as one of the worst. One reason, of course, is that the series it's based off of is absolutely incredible. Seriously, if you haven't had the chance to see the animated Avatar: The Last Airbender, we can't recommend it enough. There's a reason it jumped to the #1 spot on Netflix as soon as it started streaming on that platform. But don't misunderstand us here. The Last Airbender didn't earn 5% on Rotten Tomatoes by simply not being as good as the original series it was based on. The movie was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and we know he has some hits and misses in his repertoire. He blew us away with movies like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, but then he's also made less than well-received films like Lady in the Water and After Earth. He was introduced to the series when his daughter dressed up as Katara for Halloween, and like so many of us, was intrigued by the series. But although he had good intentions, most fans agree his execution wasn't the best, to say the least. Let's address the most obvious issue with The Last Airbender first. While the series was praised for its diversity, the movie featured a mostly white cast. To be fair, there are some Indian and Iranian actors in the cast, but they're members of the Fire Nation, who are by and large the bad guys in the series. Yeah, not good. Shyamalan doubled down on the controversial casting decision by saying anime is based on ambiguous facial features, and that he picked stars that look like the characters in the show. It's just that most of them happen to be white.
No one can argue that.
When the movie was converted to 3D post-production, it added a bunch of money to the budget, but cost fans half an hour of film so it could get done before the deadline. Most fans agree that the movie failed to capture the spirit of the show. It didn't have a sense of humor, it relied too heavily on narration instead of dialogue, and it was filled to the brim with plot holes. There are a lot of things about The Last Airbender that just don't make sense. Why were the Earthbenders contained in a prison surrounded by Earth they could have easily used to escape when in the show they were trapped on an island surrounded by a boiling lake? Firebenders can only manipulate existing flames, which means a lot of unnecessary torch carrying, while in the show they can manifest flames using their abilities. Princess Yue and Sokka's relationship is dumbed down so much we're simply told they like each other. Not to mention the fact that Sokka is a mere shadow of the person we saw in the show. Honestly, we could go on and on, but you get the point by now. This isn't just a handful of fans angry the film didn't live up to the show. There were some serious issues with the movie, but we have reason to believe they won't happen in the live-action series.
Do not kill the Avatar!
The first reason is that Netflix is involved. Obviously, Netflix isn't perfect, and they've certainly produced some less than quality content, but they also have a history of being hands-off when it comes to the projects they fund. And considering the fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender creators Michael Dante DiMartino and Bryan Konietzko are on board, that's definitely a good thing. According to the creators, part of the reason Avatar: The Last Airbender was so successful was because Nickelodeon gave them so much creative freedom during the show's initial run. DiMartino says they got to create the show they wanted without having to hold themselves back, aside from some standard rules about making content on a children's channel. It's obvious this pair knows what they're doing, and we've seen what amazing things they can create with the right resources and not too many restrictions. We've also seen Netflix create awesome fantasy adaptations, most recently, The Witcher series. After seeing Henry Cavill cutting down monsters as Geralt of Rivia, we have high hopes about their Avatar: The Last Airbender series. And we definitely have to give Netflix credit for seeing the previous attempt of making a live-action version of the series and thinking, we can do better, instead of nobody should ever do this ever again. At first, DiMartino and Konietzko were once excited about the prospect of M. Night Shyamalan directing The Last Airbender, but, well, they saw the same movie the rest of us did. They seem eager not to repeat the same mistakes that plagued the movie, saying, we can't wait to realize Aang's world as cinematically as we always imagined it could be. They also promised to provide fans with a more diverse, culturally appropriate cast. DiMartino and Konietzko expressed excitement on building up the story they created in the show, and going more in depth with the characters, storylines, and world building.
Should we try it?
Yes, we should.
Although they didn't mention The Last Airbender specifically in this statement to IndieWire, it's not hard to see they were describing the exact opposite of the film. This new show is supposed to be a reimagined version of the show we all know and love, and DiMartino and Konietzko are acting as executive producers and showrunners. Not only that, but Jeremy Zuckerman, who composed music for the original series, is lending his talents to this project as well. So far, we have a lot of talented people working on this project and Netflix backing them up, which definitely sounds like a recipe for success. Although the project was first announced all the way back in 2018, the series doesn't seem to be in production yet. Originally, it was going to kick off in 2019, but got delayed until 2020. But in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously that didn't work out so well either for this project and many others. We may end up waiting a while, but having more time to prepare is rarely a bad thing. When the live-action series does debut, it won't be a rush job. While we don't know about any potential casting options, it's encouraging that the creators are looking for more diversity than the movie. Not that it would be very difficult to do.
I don't see why not.
So what exactly does Netflix need to impress fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender? Well, one easy suggestion is taking care with the CGI and special effects. Now, to be fair, they did put a lot of effort into the CGI for the movie, but thankfully things have come a long way since, well, this. When The Last Airbender started, they didn't have the technology they needed to bend the elements the way Shyamalan wanted, which resulted in him having to direct up to 60 takes to get a single scene right. As much as it's easy to be salty at him for making the movie at all, he did put a lot of frustrating hours into the project. Plus, some fault lies with the fact that the movie was adapted to be released in 3D. Even legendary director James Cameron, who directed that other Avatar movie, knows this is generally a bad idea. He believes that labeling something 3D isn't enough to make it true, and that creating quality 3D content needs to be the goal from the beginning if you want things to look right. Obviously, the bending is a big part of the show, and it's something we need to see done and done well in the show. Oh, and come on, let the firebender summon fire this time. Aside from the special effects, we'd also like to see the characters pulling off some impressive martial arts moves, unlike the often clunky fighting scenes from The Last Airbender. We also want to see more of characters other than Avatar Aang. In the movie, characters like Sokka and Katara were barely there most of the time. Poor Katara didn't even get any in-depth training and was just portrayed as Aang's love interest instead of the incredible person and well-rounded warrior she really is. The creators did say that they want to go more in-depth with the characters, which means that we could see more of Katara than we did in the original series, and that's something a lot of fans would definitely appreciate. We'd also like to see Sokka getting a sense of humor back, since it was sorely missing in The Last Airbender. Zuko is another character we'd like to see get justice in the live-action series. Although he's a prince of the Fire Nation, he's a complex character who eventually decides to help our heroes instead of fighting against them. But in the movie, he didn't get that convincing and oh so satisfying redemption arc, and him helping Aang came across as abrupt because of it.
We have to keep moving.
One of the reasons the original show was so successful was because it treated the characters as complex and nuanced instead of putting them neatly into good or bad categories. Let's not forget that even though Aang's the Avatar and a great hero, he did run away from his responsibilities in the first place, which led to the conquest by the Fire Nation. Another major thing we want to see is a faithful adaptation of the original series. Yes, it would be great to learn more about our favorite characters, see some new content, and maybe elevate some side characters, but we don't want too much deviation from Avatar: The Last Airbender. While Netflix has created some great shows, they made major changes to their live-action adaptation of Death Note that not all fans were happy with, to put it mildly. Yes, we got to hear Willem Dafoe voice Ryuk, but at what cost? We aren't expecting a shot-for-shot remake of the original, but we hope the creators embrace what worked with the original series and incorporate that into the live-action version. Of course, we don't need an ulterior motive to want a good live-action version of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but we have to admit we have one anyway. Maybe. If this goes well, we could get a do-over of The Legend of Korra? Most people agree Avatar: The Last Airbender is beyond reproach, but don't feel the same way about the sequel. There is even a ton of controversy about the ending. When Asami and Korra become a couple, some fans were upset we didn't get to see them share a kiss the way Aang and Katara did, while others were upset that their romance appeared in a children's show. If we get a quality, live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender, then maybe we could get a more in-depth look at The Legend of Korra 2.
It's been a bit of a bumpy ride, huh?
How do you feel about the upcoming live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender? Are you excited to see how it comes out, or are you too traumatized by the movie to risk getting your heart broken again? Share your thoughts, predictions, and even fears with us in the comments section, and stay up to date with us here at Screen Rant by clicking on the subscribe button and turning on your notifications. We'll see you next time.